I'm kind of off the grid. I'm out here in the man cave, the natural man cave. I'll come back to that later. Come back to that a little bit later. In fact, there's 3 topics of this particular diatribe, I guess. Number one is off the grid. Number 2 is the musicians of the 1967 Club and the ones I kind of wobble in. And then the last part is leaves growing toward sunlight, which has a lot to do with Peter Wollobin's book entitled The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel and How They Communicate. So yeah, we're off the grid today, I guess. Apparently there is no grid in the neighborhood in which I reside. The electricity is out. It's been out since probably, 1 o'clock. And it's getting close to around 6 now. So we've had electricity without electricity for 4 or 5 hours. Which is absolutely fine for me. As I said, I'm back here really off the grid in the little man cave, which is a grove of trees. And that I've whittled out and mowed out in a little area, a little chair up under all of these bushes and weeds and little trees and branches and leaves that cover me up right now. Of course, in another couple months or so, there won't be anything covering me up, but maybe a few little hollow, as if, limbs and small trunks. But today, in the here and now, there is definitely some overhead covering, a canopy of leaves, off the grid. And speaking of those leaves, let's go ahead and jump to the third little discussion for today, which is Peter Wollobin's. I don't know what his last name is. He's another German. He wrote a book, and I have the audio book for it. It's narrated by someone that's not him. But anyway, it's called The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel, How They Communicate. Peter Wollobin. And of course, this guy worked in forests in Germany. Of course, Germany is, their past is definitely very challenged, and we all know about that. But they have done some very interesting things in the past several years. Another real quick, something to throw in: German is the 3rd most popular language in Arkansas. English, Spanish, German. There's actually a huge German population in Arkansas. A lot of people moved here a long time ago from Germany. And, it's really neat. You can always tell when you're in German areas. It's always really clean. And you can tell specific architecture. There's a specific architecture, it seems like, that whenever a German-American makes it, they build their house in that German style. And it's absolutely captivating. It's beautiful. I love it. I love to be around those houses, and just because it's got such a great aura to them. Back about 20 years ago or so, I got to spend some time up in central Arkansas, where the German population is the most. I think it's like from Pine Bluff on up, and really over towards, of course, Stuttgart. There's all kinds of German, place names here as well. Hamburg. In fact, I live right beside Hamburg, Germany, Arkansas. Across it's not as German, but there. Yeah, I grew up in my address is Hamburg, Arkansas. So there's this huge German presence here, and of course I've been subjected to it forever. And of course, German people are like any other specific line of people. They're different. They have their own ways. But anyway, I got to up in about 20 years ago or so. I got to spend some time in the central Arkansas, where, like as I was trying to go, there's a huge population of people of German descent. And I stayed at this. It's like I guess it's a lodge, but it's a winery. They make wine, of course, and they also have a restaurant where you can eat some authentic German food. It had a lot of sauces and such. It's that kind of reminded me of a French experience, but it's not as Frenchy as French is. It's much more hearty food. It's thicker. It's it was covered with a sauce or something along those lines, but it was a heavier thing. It was a different experience, but it was really great to experience. And of course, everything was just exactly tidy. And I mean, there's a lot of that German manufacturing. Of course, it's been mixed a little bit with the Japanese manufacturing style of the past 20 or 30 years or so, but maybe even longer than that. But yeah, even on their own, I think they just meshed together with the Japanese processes and made an even more superior thing than both of them already were. I mean, their manufacturing processes are just awesome. I get to work with right now several German companies. It's just such a weird experience because they do things so differently. But anyway, that's Peter Wallenben, reading about his book, doing business with them, staying at their places to eat and stay and explore. But yeah, he was in Germany, or I guess he probably still is. But he was worked as a forester commission as a forester. And of course, he spent all of this time I think he's probably 60-ish now, but he spent all of this time, 50 or 60-ish, spent all these years out there in the forest, kind of watching things, studying it, doing little experiments, reading about other little experiments. And he came to some really, some bold assertions, things that some of us kind of knew. If you ever looked at any kind of a pantheism or Taoism or any other kind of a more natural type worldview, you'll find a lot of this. Even the Wiccans are very earthy type people. But anyway, so what they feel and how they communicate, and of course he goes in and he talks about this. And of course, what they feel is a different time experience than what we feel. As you may know, some trees live to be 10,000 years old, 5 to 10,000 years old. A young tree is 160. I mean, trees regularly get to be 500-600 years old. There's trees alive right now that were here whenever Columbus came across. So even before, it's just unbelievable whenever you start thinking about what all those trees have experienced. That they are a huge reservoir of knowledge. And of course, that's kind of what the Native Americans call trees as well, which is the standing people, the old people, the ones that contain all the history of us. Because, our history's there on the trees that are closest to us. And what we breathe, what we hang up on them, all kinds of things. They're very great history keepers, which would make sense because they stay alive for so long. And their communication style is very much in line with their experience of reality, which is slow, which is almost can say, although it's not really 100% scientifically pure to say it. But I think that within a few years we'll discover that it's absolutely in the line of thought that's reality, scientifically provable, is that trees are conscious. It's just a different kind of consciousness than what we experience as a human being. We experience the human experience as it's relatively fast, and we're right here and now. But trees they're right here and now, as it lags from reality. So you may hit a tree and they may not know it for a few days, but then they'll start pushing out chemicals, and that's the next part of it is how they communicate. Well, they communicate each other with chemicals. Like, for instance, at the very low level, the first things that scientists discovered was that, if a tree was lacking in, vitamin D, it would send out signals. And then the other trees that it were connected to, and even, that like its genetic kin, the ones like it, and sometimes nothing like it. It's just that it's a host tree. It's compatible. The other trees will send chemicals to it. They send vitamin D to it and help it survive. And of course, if you go into that book, like I said, I have the audio book and listen to it at least 3 times just to comprehend small bits of it, just to really comprehend what he's saying. But like I said, if it needs that, it'll send those chemicals out. But now, if it's a tree that they don't like, well, then of course. It won't send anything to them. In fact, it'll do the opposite. It'll try to suck its vitamin D away, what little bit's left. So it's it's a vicious cycle out there too. It's not like they're just these hippies that crawl around in trees to protect them from getting cut down. They're not like that, but they help their own, but like everything else, they'll fight too. And of course, so they'll grow sometimes. Yeah, what's fascinating, there were certain trees that were in rocky environments that they actually studied, and of course, those trees. It takes them forever to get to be a large tree. To be 10 feet tall, it may take it hundreds of years. There's trees, like I said, on the rocky edges there that would be 150, 250, 300 years old and just be just a few feet tall, or small, foot tall, 100 years old. In fact, they've looked at other type at a tree, and of course, sometimes you'll cut down a tree, but you've only cut down that one part of it. The root system is connected to other trees, and of course, you got to figure out what a tree is. It's kind of like the largest organism on the planet that's known of as a mushroom, fungi. It's I forget exactly how big it is, but I think it's around 23 acres, 33 acres. It's a large amount of acres that this tree, the size of this tree. This mushroom. But trees are a lot like that as well, in that they're all connected. It's not just one complete blob that has one little system that goes in and out. It's just this huge, totally different kind of organism than we are, experiencing consciousness a whole different way than we are. But it's still conscious. It knows the sun, and it'll run toward it. And that's where one of the parts of this whole presentation is that these leaves, they know where to go to get that sun. If it's these trees, so if there's a tree over there that's lost a limb recently, it'll make sure that it grows that way. It'll send a branch over that way, a limb. It's amazing how they will operate. We don't understand their level of consciousness, though, because it's so far away from what ours are. And speaking of so far away, the final little discussion area of this experience is the 1967 Club. And I would say it's also the 27 Club, but it's not really, because, a lot of them were not born. A lot of them didn't die at 27 years old. Of course, big examples are Scott Weiland, who was born in 1967, and Chris Cornell, who was born in 1964. But what I was speaking of is all the grunge singers that were popular in the early 90s, when they were in their mid-20s or so. These are guys that were born around 1967, and those are like Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, Scott Weiland. Shannon Hoon was born in like February of 1968, so he was conceived at least in 1967. And Chris Cornell, who lived to be the oldest of any of those, in fact, he was like 52 or 53, he was born in 1964, so he's a little bit outside the lines. But I look at those singers from the era, and it's just absolutely crazy, man, that music is not being represented right now. I know that Alice in Chains have actually picked up a singer, and so has STP, which, it just kind of disturbs me in some ways that they're still calling themselves that. Because the tour de force, their voice is gone, the tour de voice. But then again, it's like, you got to move on. Of course, there's all kinds of people that I watch on these boards on your Facebook there that argue over there every day. It's stupid, they shouldn't name it the same name, and I don't like it this one now, it's STP is STP without Scott. And of course, I agree with everything that everybody says, just depending on what kind of mood I'm in, But it's so weird that all those, the people, I guess you'd call it Generation X, has, we've experienced some crazy things in our lifetime. We're the first generation to, I guess really nothing. It's just that things have been really, I guess that's the one thing that Generation X experienced more than anybody else is an accelerated rate of social change. And I think that we kind of brought about this whole latchkey thing. In fact, I think we were the latchkey kids, those kids that spent time alone and without adults. Because the parents of today, and one of those is me, is like, I watch my kids a whole lot closer than we got watched in the 70s, for sure. I mean, you did anything you wanted to do. In fact, you did probably more than what you should have been doing. I remember it was quite normal for people to expose their kids to things they weren't ready for. And I'm talking about psychologically, sociologically, and from a drug perspective, and alcohol shoved on kids. Cigarettes, dipping tobaccos, and chewing tobaccos, and alcohol, which was everywhere. I mean, if you were alive during that period of time, I mean, people drank all the time at work, smoked marijuana and everything. It was just a crazy time everywhere. I think, I don't know if it was always like that. I think that it's just in the past little while that things have gotten crazy because we quit all that. Maybe. Hell, I don't know. We put them in jail. Of course, that created other problems. So, I mean, it's kind of like the Taoists say, going back to a more earthly thought. I mean, what exactly works? You fiddle with stuff too much, it'll get all messed up. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Who knows? Safety is good, but who knows? I mean, some people, like those guys, those musicians, I mean, they're the very emotional type people that throw themselves out in front of everyone like that. And I mean, that's a different type of experience, and maybe that people just can't handle it. It's weird. You think about that. There's so many things to consider. They're artists typically that go into stuff like that to go into a field of study, a field of existence, a thing to do like that. To be a musician and travel around and play music in front of people, you're already a different breed, because that's not what everybody can do. I mean, you got to be talented. You've got to be, I don't know. You got to want to do it. You got to be able to sacrifice a lot for it. There's all kinds of trappings with it. It's like you can tell. Like I've only played a very little bit, but I know just from what little experience I had with it that would be easy to be enabled, which creates an early death because everybody gives you what you want when you want it. And so there's that weird experience, and I'm sure that a childhood that we can blame it on a childhood, yeah, whatever. But, I mean, it's just the trappings of that whole existence. So it's like, those people when that happened to them, and not everybody turned out like that. I'm actually working on the background on a book idea called Generation (EX) with a capital X with a little E in parentheses, and then Junkies, Generation X Junkies. Because there's so much drug prevalence among people that are in the Generation X. But, I say that, and then I thought that. And then, of course, I went and looked. And, of course, the generations today are more drugged out than ever, than any Generation X probably is. And the baby boomers have all but destroyed their entire generation with opioids. Even though you think that Generation X has, but so has the other ones. So who knows, man? Who knows how to do it? Who knows what's right and what's wrong, and all that kind of business. Of course, you can leave it off with a little poem by Lane Staley. It's called Junkhead. It's Alice in Chains. Oh, good night, the best in a long time. A new friend turned me on to an old favorite. Nothing better than a dealer who's high. Be high, convince them to buy. Yeah. What's my drug of choice? Well, what have you got? I don't go broke, and I do it a lot. It seems so sick to the hypocrite norms, running down foreign trails. But we are an elite race of our own, the stoners, junkies, and freaks. Are you happy? I am man, content and fully aware, yeah. Money status ain't shit to me, 'cause your life's empty and bare, yeah. What's my drug of choice? Well, what have you got? I don't go broke, and I do it a lot. I do it a lot, yeah. No, 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 no. You can't understand the user's mind, but try with your books and degrees. If you let yourself go, man, open your mind. I bet you be using like me, and it ain't so bad. What's my drug of choice? Well, what have you got? I don't go broke, and I do it a lot. I do it a lot. I said I do it a lot. And I'm out. Have fun. Be safe. See you on the sunny side.